You guys sound great.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Great.
All right. Starting the Economic Revitalization Commission meeting for today. Okay, so the first order on our agenda is the approval for the minutes from the commission meeting on March 19th, 2024. Hope you guys had a chance to read it. Anyone want to put a motion? Second? Second. Looking only.
Somebody else can do it.
Actually, no, we got some folks on the line there too. Approved. Right. Minutes approved. So next agenda item is from the Deputy Director, an update from the Office of Economic Revitalization.
Yes. All right, Kate's gonna share our presentation here.
Speak up if you guys can't see it online.
Hang on.
Oh, wait.
Hi.
So sorry.
I'm
Look,
squeezing.
you squeezed in like in here.
Why do you guys have full
If you say it black, you're not.
previous?
All right, I'm gonna close
discount?
It looks like electric outlets. All right, so just wanted to give just a real quick OER update for everyone. First and foremost, our grants contractor contract is routing for signature, so we're really excited. That's $250,000 to help us on OER, those attached to the managing director's office, so climate change, sustainability and resiliency, Office of Housing, and the Mayor's Office on Culture and the Arts go after some grants.
next screen.
And then, so go after some grants, but also create a learning lab and a learning library. And, you know, kind of revisit our processes and make sure that we have some streamlined processes. So it's not only, at the end of the day, the product won't be just for the managing director's offices, it'll be for citywide improvement. So we're really excited about that. And I think there might be some synergy when we talk about what we have to do once we get the money and then procure out. The other thing that we're really excited about is our EDA Economic Recovery Corps Fellow. So this is a 2.5-year fellowship funded through the EDA and some recovery funds. David Ballenberg started in April. He started remotely. He will be here in June on the island. So you'll all get a chance to meet him later this year. Currently in DC with some federal training. So since we wanted him in person, they did ask that we be a little bit patient and allow all of the fellows to go to this training, and we said, yeah, of course, by all means.
So is he in Rio de Janeiro right now?
Well, he's in DC, it may not be quite that great, but, so next slide, thank you. Just wanted to give you an update on some of your priorities as well. So the Oahu Business Connector, as you know, launched in early March, and we're happy to say that since March into the beginning of May, when we did our last report, there are already 5,100 website visits with 766 requests for assistance through the resource finder. That's not including the 28 custom connection plans that the team has done. And they take a little while to put together, but those 28 are also in connection with our Small Business Connection program, which is in-person community office hours. Right now, there are 4 across the island. We tried to kind of quadrant it out. So the first one started out in Kapolei. That is a partnership with the Small Business Administration. We set one up in Windward, Oahu, out at the Kokokahi YWCA location in coordination with EWOC. And then in urban Honolulu at the Hub co-working space down on Queen Street. They've been really good to us. And then started one up earlier, late last year, late last calendar year on the North Shore. So these are all at least monthly office hours where we're going out into the community. They each have a different model that's kind of dependent on the needs of the community and the personalities of the community. So in West Oahu out at Kapolei, it's more of a speaker that comes in, kind of a topical thing, and then resource providers around that afterwards. On the North Shore, it's more of an open office hours, come as you are after you're done surfing kind of community. So that's how that is. And then urban Honolulu down at the Hub co-working space is another one. People can sign up for a meeting, or because it is a co-working space, a lot of times what happens is people just kind of stop by the desk and say, hey, what's going on? What can you tell me? Windward Oahu is another one, we just gotta market a little bit more because they're kind of off the beaten path down there at Kokokahi, and you don't really just drive by and see them, or you can't really just pop in because of the protections there, because there is a preschool on property. It's a little bit more formal, but what we have been talking with the team about is expanding this to another 4 council districts by the end of the calendar year. So setting up those partnerships so that we expand these. The idea is to have one in every single council district. So,
Quick question, for
Yeah.
the 766, is that the 4 areas of interest?
so those areas of interest that have come in, whether it's the 766 or just in general, as people are going through it, is yes, financial resources and assistance. So definitely things that we commonly see, and resources that we're trying to build through some of our work. And then business planning, I found that was actually kind of interesting that, 11% were actually asking for business planning, which is exciting. Definitely have resources in the committee for that. HR and workforce is the number 2 thing we hear all the time, access to capital and HR and resource. And then just how to start a business. So I'm happy to see that people are thinking about, hey, let me think about starting a business before I actually start a business. And they don't just kind of get into it going, hey, I'm really good at, baking, or I'm really good at trinkets, and I have an idea, but I'm not necessarily a good business planner, right? So we're really excited to see that there is this interest out there and that we have the tools for it. So
We had a speaker from this group come to talk to us at the business law section
Mhm.
of the bar.
Alyssa, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was great, but then, we're kind of brainstorming with her about some ideas, because there's only like a handful of these people, right?
There's 4 of them.
And they service the whole
whole
island,
island,
basically.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's not sustainable, right? I mean, they can't really help everybody, but, I mentioned to her some ideas, like having a volunteer core of people willing to provide, so they can make referrals, right?
Yep.
Like SCORE, right? They retired executives, so, so I think with the 4 of them, I mean, they do what they can, but, that's tough.
So there's a couple things around that, right? Is that not everybody needs us. With all due
Really?
respect, not everybody needs us. Some of these businesses have moved on to DBED and the wonderful tools that DBED have, right? And so we in the last year have really focused our outreach on 502 businesses that we identified that are in what we call lower inclusive growth score areas. And it's a figure that MasterCard put together. So it takes the social vulnerability index and it layers on some other economic data. And then we saw these pockets. And then, so that took a list of 27,000 businesses down to about 13. So think about that too, right? Half of our businesses are in socially disadvantaged areas if you look at these scores. And then we said, okay, well, if Melee and these accelerator programs are really looking for businesses that are $100,000 or more in gross revenue, that's our goal, is to try and get these businesses there. And then they move into a different part of the ecosystem. And so we looked at that and we're like, okay, that's still a lot of businesses. And so we narrowed it down to the 502 because we thought in 1 year we could get to those 502 business. You cannot do just that. You have to have some of those wins on the side. We're doing the office hours. We want to do more in-person workshops. We're doing talk stories, which we still have to schedule your talk story. So there's other efforts that are going on. So that's why the 502 we thought was a really good target. We're getting close to finishing that. Several of the council districts have been completed. The biggest one is Council District 5. That's where the majority of the businesses are. So the team has kind of doubled down on getting the other ones done and then kind of mass doing Council District 5. So we're getting close to that. But to your point, we are the connector, right? So the scores, the business law core, BSD and the great programs, the high step programs and everything that they have there are who we refer people out to. So we're the connector to the resources.
So
So
it just started, but we have not been contacted at the
You're on it?
nonprofit. I know.
Yeah.
But maybe, out of all those visits, no one needed us, I guess, which is fine.
That's what I
Kind of
thought.
lonely. I'm sitting by the
Okay,
phone,
so a
like.
couple things. One, that's why we have to do your top story. Because we want to make sure through this as well that those referrals that come to you are primed for you, right? So what are those questions? I know I need a lawyer. Okay, what kind of lawyer do you need? I don't know. And
They
so
don't need to
talking
be
them.
though. We talk to a lot of
For
people
sure.
that are unprimed.
For sure. But we'd like to make sure that as much as
Okay.
possible that they're primed. So let's get that top
And then-
story scheduled.
Okay, and then
Okay,
the other thing,
y'all heard
this
it, right?
question is metrics, like, are you already knowing how you're gonna measure yourself? Is it these kind of statistics, or could you track job creation somehow?
That one's a little bit
I know,
tougher, but
I
it's
know.
definitely something that, through the relationship building, we'd like to do. So one of the other things that I was gonna talk about a little bit later that I think will answer that question, is that we are putting the finishing touches on an MOA with DBED through HTDC on $186,000 over the next 3 years to provide the conduit for technical assistance. So we'll then contract to Business Law Works or whomever, right? Through that, we'll be able to get some of that granular data, but walking business to business and saying, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
How many jobs have you done and have you created in the last year is a little bit harder to do, but through some of these efforts, we like to do that. And that's what we're learning through the business connector itself, because they have to give us some of that information as we're putting together these custom connection plans. So yes, but we worry about going to traditional economic data as well, right? Job creation, GDP. You know, yes, we want jobs, but we also want to make sure that they're good paying jobs, right? Not just a job for the sake of a job. So. But yes.
Okay, thanks very much.
I'm just curious, Jim. One thing that we hear on the banking side is that small businesses need help marketing themselves.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm wondering where that fell into the areas of interest, because I didn't see it on the top floor, but.
It's interesting, it hasn't in there yet, and they just sent me the top 4, so I can go look at that, but that's something that we've been talking with the team about, putting some of our own resources too, because through the SSBCI technical assistance, we're allowed to pay for legal, financial, and accounting.
Okay.
But branding and marketing is another big one, like you said, right? How do I do a customer analysis? Right, so there's some tools through Esri that we think we might be able to help a really basic customer analysis that they can then take to a professional, right? Just to have kind of spur some of those thoughts and those questions when they do go sit in front of a professional. So we're moving in that direction for sure. Yeah. All right, so just some other programs that we're working on are COFA migrant death benefits. Last week, we received the second round of requests for proposals, and so those are being reviewed. We had more than one, so they're being reviewed and they're being scored. There will probably be some follow-up questions, as typically happens in this process, that will go back to all of the respondents, and so it's going to take a little bit longer in order to get the final decision made, but we are moving in a positive direction in that way. We still have a $9 million total in our food systems and food securities from our SLFRF funds that we're working on, and then $5 million in our Oahu Good Jobs, was signed last year. So just want to give you an update. We had 386 registered participants in this program to date. 23 have completed training. Not really sure how this works out. Maybe Amy can expand on this, but one of the data points that they sent us is that 30 courses have been completed. Assuming that's more than one course per those 23 people there, and then 47 are currently in session. So they're moving along, have some really good feedback and registrations around our horticultural classes and certifications, and this is really a direct hiring initiative for the city. We need this in our parks. City.
Ellen, there was a cost that participants had to contribute.
No, so this is all free training.
I saw one ad for something that looked similar that did have a cost.
There's no cost for us.
Yeah, so this is part of the Good Jobs Challenge, right? So we kind of layered in there, but there are a few lines that were direct for city employment because we need. And this is one of those areas that we're really excited about. And it's quite interesting that people really grabbed onto this. I actually thought about it, working outside all day sounded really good. And then our broadband equity access deployment, we're moving ahead with that. $100,000 with UH in order to do outreach, so we can hire some interns, we can reserve some facilities in order to do this, but really working with nonprofits in the community to challenge what Spectrum and Hawaiian Tel and Sandwich Isles to some extent have claimed that they have coverage that's not only available but affordable. It's a really complicated process, and so Constancio's kind of narrowed it down, and the best success that we think we can have is working with these nonprofits in the community to say, yeah, it's not really what it's like, and so getting them to be those those resources in the community to get that information back. And to your point, there's only so many so many people and so many hours a day that we've got to capitalize on others as well. So in addition to that, we have a proposal into the process for another $720,000 for equity and affordability. And so this is into DVET. Hopefully we'll get something soon on that.
September-ish.
September-ish, we'll
The
get something.
state gets 6 million and you hope to get a chunk of it.
We're hoping to get some of it, so we can really address that affordability part of it. So we also have a few other small business initiatives, a startup and accelerator program that we've kind of bounced around, originally thought about with SLFRF. That didn't work out, and so now we're looking at some other funding resources for that. Really doing a big push around Small Business Saturday, so some ideas around, you know, keep a time with key, maybe something on the North Shore. Something around Small Business Saturday, but maybe not on Small Business Saturday in Chinatown, so a dine, arts, shopping, love, Chinatown, regenerative tourism kind of fashion component to it. So excited about that. Working on a small business loan initiative with HUD funding. So working really hard on that. And like I said, the SSBCI technical assistance, so I'll go ahead and skip that since we already talked about that. Want to thank everyone so much for your support through our budget process. Many of you submitted written testimony. We really appreciate it. Eliza, thank you for calling in and being live last Monday. All of your efforts worked. We got all of the positions that we wanted. We got all of the operating expenses that were requested. And on top of that, because we're doing such a good job, we got 3 new positions that we didn't ask for. So we'll be doing a lot more in outreach in immigration and community equity and making sure that folks know how to navigate city services, but also have that economic mobility opportunity. I think this is just really a great shout out to the work that our Pacific Islander liaison, who we were gonna change to a community equity liaison, and really the work that she did and the foundation she laid. And people going, hey, there's value in that. Let's expand it. So we're super excited about that, and I want to thank everybody. So
Is it a normal process? Like, you know, I don't really know how these things work, but were they really trying to cut you by that amount?
No.
Or was it just, that's how
We're
things
just
work?
pawns in the game.
You're just,
We were eliminated for funding DIT, the Department of Information Technology was eliminated, Department of Land Management was eliminated. So they, some of our friends in the room here, Mary, Alice, and Lauren are very familiar. They just they need some leverage with the administration really to get, they're looking for some funds that they can earmark for their projects and priorities. The way that budget has been done has shifted over the last few years, and Council Chair Waters, you know, wanted to have that's a tete with the
so it
mayor.
was a threat, kind of.
This is just how it works as far as.
It was a bargaining
it
chip.
used to be like this. So everybody would get, the administration would put it in, and everybody would get zeroed and have to go back and justify every penny that they asked for. So is it normal? It's not abnormal, but we had moved away from it a little bit. Yeah, I don't know.
There's 9 members to talk to work with, to get on the same page with.
Yeah. It's better than 76. And however, one thing that we do struggle with is that they, because of sunshine, they can't talk to each other. You know, the legislature exempted themselves from the sunshine law along those lines, but they can't talk to each other. So it was a lot of you guys making a phone call, submitting the testimony, Amy and I going and talking with them, having other people call and talk with them. So just because they can't talk to each other.
Yeah. So one of the pieces of feedback we got was, what is OER again? I mean, they ask the same things about the Department of Land Management and other things, but we're the newest, right? And when ocean safety becomes its own, I think people know what ocean safety does, right? However, there's some new council members, there's some older ones with a point they want to make. And so, you know, they're like, revitalization, what is that? I mean, aren't we revitalized? Why do we need you anymore? You guys should go away. And, you know, COVID is done. And so our office was created by the city council and in charter with very specific goals around economic development. We can work on with our staff today about 4 of the 8 that the city council created for us. But we would like to be clear that our goal is economic development, right? What we're working on is economic development. And I have a little sticker from the International Economic Development Council that says, I work in economic development, and underneath it, it says, yes, nobody knows what that is, you know, like, and so we collectively, you know, get to determine what that is. And we have had a lot of support from you guys, from the mayor, you know, to get focused on what that is and, you know, charge ahead in this sort of new territory for the city. And we've also had a lot of support from folks at DBET and others that has helped us to define where the gaps are, you know, and where we could jump in and fill that role. And so we really started, you know, talking about this. This is with some help from a friend of mine who was our previous facilitator here at the commission, Andrew Oki, talking through like, what are we trying to get at here? And really, we learned a lot of things through the pandemic. And one of them was that businesses were really struggling. And even the ones that weren't struggling so much don't necessarily have a strong foundation. And so if we could put one message in the ears of the council members and others as to what we're trying to do, we are trying to make Oahu a good place to do business. And I think, interestingly, ironically, by Kismet, that was one of the exact things Reed said when we started this. You know, like, if we need a tagline, what is it? You know, a good place to do good business, right? So this is what we're working towards in all of the programs that we run. We are really focused on that early life cycle of a business, the startup, you know, the idea generation, you know, the beginning incubation. So then ultimately we can hand them off to the folks at DBET and others who do like export, manufacturing, growth, all of those other things that we do not need to duplicate in the city. But beyond that,
second good, that you said to that first statement.
yeah, a good place to do good business. Get out of there.
Hey, this is Melly here on the call. Would it make sense? I mean, I don't think it would take a big lift, but like we found the same thing where nobody understands what economic development is, and it's always just like, or even how to tackle it, or it's just like this ambiguous issue that it's quote unquote important, but nobody knows what it is. Would it make sense to try to, I don't know, create some kind of one-sheeter or something that's like helping to try to identify it so we can get people to understand it or yes quicker? Is that even possible?
Well, there's a lot of different advice on that. The managing director suggested that we do an OER by the numbers. He felt that that was something effective for like the Department of Planning and Permitting when they were having a hard time getting across all of the many changes that they're making. So we put that together. We haven't really had a chance to put that in front of council members yet, but we had made a focused effort since the last budget process to invite them to every single activity that we do in the community, whether it's joining the Oahu Digital Equity Coalition. I think we still have at least 3 council staff participating, whether it's helping us put on a rental and utility relief event in their district, whether it's coming to meet one of the businesses that got the Oahu Business Relief or Recovery Funds, or one of the farmers that got ag grant. So we try to engage them, bring them in, you know, educate them about what we're doing organically by that interaction. But the city government is vast, and, you know, there is a lot of things that they care about. So we're okay, but I do take to heart what you say, Mele, because I think generally around economic development, if you ask the state legislature, what does DBET do too? There'd probably be 1 or 2 of the divisions that they could clearly identify. And then, oh yeah, OPSC too. Yeah, right. Oh, energy office, right? Forgot about that. So on that point, there's a couple other points we want to make here. Obviously, that we're working urgently to get Oahu fully on board in the areas of clean energy, technological innovation, regenerative tourism, sustainable agriculture, creative industries. We're not trying to boil the ocean. We can't be everything to everyone. This is where we have some concerted, you know, staff power and opportunity. and also partnership. And then finally, our major focus is on leveraging federal dollars. We believe we're essentially a pass-through to get the dollars out into our economy, out into those areas that we see that need the support, and focusing on that for our future. And that is critical for the council members to understand. We're not leaning into that for more general funds. We'll go get it. We want to supplement revenues to the city. So it's out there creating these economic opportunities across all, right? So that's what those equity liaisons are going to help us with, the language support that's really needed to work. Those business owners, those farmers and others don't yet operate in English as a business standard. So
After this last
slide.
session, I just telling Kim that why did this happen, but also do we need to do more, like as commissioners, to help spread the word about who we are? Like go visit, can we go visit council members ourselves? Say, hey, you know, this is what we're doing, just want to share that with you. You know, it doesn't take that much time, but would they take a meeting with us? I don't know.
Absolutely.
They
Oh, really?
will, of course.
Okay.
They are just amending the boards and commission ordinance language, so that will come up for review next year, I think, which is early, because usually it's every 5 years. And at that time, we'll have only been around for 2. That provides a great opportunity. Our annual report provides another opportunity. It was really Owen and Eliza presenting. But I think any opportunity to get to know council members,
Can we do
Olin,
that on our own? Like, we absolutely.
well, I
we
mean,
should
ideally that it
coordinate,
makes,
but-
yes.
But it doesn't hurt to meet with them on any basis.
With sunshine laws, they have to do it on their own, right? Is that-
No.
No?
You just couldn't go like 3 of you
wanna
in.
go with us?
Perhaps.
2 of you could go in.
Well, there's 9 of you and there's 9 council members, just saying. Y'all have one relationship. so-
I think what we need is, Guy Kawasaki is a proponent of this idea. You know who he is? He's a Yamani grad. But he says you have to have a mantra, not a business plan, you know, especially for growing organizations. So if you had a mantra, you know, what is it every day you get up and you say you're doing? I think you can't make Hawaii a good place to work because we have too many things out of our control, but we can definitely make it an easier place to work. I mean, I'm not saying that's a mantra. I'm just saying every day I get up, make it like procurement, make it easier for white businesses to get contracts. Just make it easier for startups to launch. OER, I mean, the small business, it's all making it easier for people to do business. It's never gonna be easy.
Yeah, it's just,
We're
I mean,
Hawaii.
it's really the adjective we use. Is it good? Is it easier, right? When we're talking about good jobs, we're talking about quality, better, improved quality over the course of time in the jobs that are offered here on our island. So the same, I think, like over time that access to knowing how or who to go to if you want to start up a business, when you're having trouble, who's out there to help me. I mean, we called it the Oahu Business Connector very intentionally, right? And the report that's coming in September back to the commission from UHERO, again, is looking at those connections and really going deeper and harder into the idea of the underserved, the unconnected business, and how do we reach them to find out how we help them, what their needs are. So that's coming back to you all for review in September.
That's kind of biblical, you know, the least of us. That's what the Bible says. But anyway, yeah, and I think I need to be more better educated so that when I'm at an event, I can say, you should hear about OER, you should hear about the small business. I know some bits and pieces, but I don't have myself a real clear idea of that.
And there's so much going on too. We didn't share like an earmark that we requested from SHOTS, a capstone project with private business organizations from the National League of Cities, et cetera. And so I don't think you should ever feel like you have to know all, but maybe there's
High
one
points.
area,
Yeah,
local
something we're
procurement
investing.
preference.
Yeah.
That might be the thing that.
Tell them
you
we're
can
working
take.
on trying to make it easier. If business said, really?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's the basic, go back to that slide with the 3 points, we need to know that by
Yeah.
heart, right? And then be able to speak to that, the individual initiatives, those are things we refer back to.
Yep.
The organization.
And then my final point is, I'm at a point now, after what, it's been over a year, how long have we been here, year and a half?
Year and a quarter.
That I'm now really focused on doing things. And I think if you get shit done, people will notice that. And then they'll better understand what you do.
Right.
So I think these council members need to see what we're doing.
And I think just having staff is a challenge these days. So that having an office that functions and operates, see, they know what I'm talking about. But beyond that, having pushed over $350 million out into the community of pandemic relief, we've shown that we can handle federal funds. We've shown that we can figure out all these complicated compliance things. And we're going to continue to do more because that's what we're here for. But we're an immature organization, very immature. We're at our infant stages, and there's partnerships and maybe even a community development corporation that needs to be kind of a sister entity attached to us to help us do this easier. As we develop this HUD program for the 1 to 5 million in business loans for underserved businesses, could be a huge, thing that we, just like Oahu Business Connector, a big step into who we are for the future.
It's fantastic to be immature. But
All right.
All right, we took too long.
Okay, moving on, we now have a presentation from VBET's Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. So thank you, Mary Alice Evans and Lauren Cuniano. Get that right?
Hey, thank
Floor
you,
is
Chair.
yours.
I'm Mary Alice, and this is Lauren. And we are with the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, which is an attached agency to the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism. And I think what you guys have been saying is a perfect segue into what we're going to present, which is how Hawaii can get more federal dollars for economic development and business development. So I'm going to let Lauren walk you through our presentation, and then we can answer any questions.
Yeah. Yes. Great. Well, it's nice to see so many familiar faces from lives past, and then also hear familiar voices. The U.S. Economic Development Administration has been the primary source of federal funds for economic development projects in our state. This is just sort of a very, very high-level snapshot of projects that have occurred in each county, but focusing on the left side of the screen with regard to Honolulu. Some of the projects that have been invested in by the EDA have included both construction and non-construction projects. For instance, a produce processing and training facility for Ma'o Farms, the Entrepreneur Sandbox in Kaka'ako, the UH Culinary Institute, as well as the Foreign Trade Zones Business Incubator Facility, that Homer Maxey facility over there in Pier 9. Some of the non-construction projects have included things like business support programs, but also things like the community-based economic development, revolving loan fund, and a few others. Next slide, please. Oh, this is the older version, isn't it? Oh, and that's okay if it is, because this slide is just obviously very difficult to look at because of the huge investment by the EDA during, with COVID funding. But basically,
Oh, sorry. I don't know about everyone else online, but the slides aren't moving. I'm on the Mahalo slide.
Yeah, me too.
So go back to share screen, and you gotta change the screen. Thanks, Melly.
Sorry, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Is the
Is that other
Which
one?
is the new one.
Can you try that one?
Okay. Oh, this is okay. This is what I was having trouble with.
Oh, okay. That's okay. If not, we could go back to the other slides. It's fine.
Then you have to stop share.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay.
That's a wrong one.
I think she was having issues with
No, that's
the
the
connection
right
to the other ones.
The
Yeah.
Chrome one is the right one.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, we can see that now. Thank you.
Great. So, basically, there have been significant investments in public works, and so those are the construction projects, right? That's some of the ones that I mentioned, FTC, the Entrepreneur Sandbox. And so you see on that bottom line of the table, that there have been significant investments through those programs, but really it's been the non-construction, so the economic adjustment assistance and the other that have been kind of the steady source of funding into for economic development projects. And of course, all of the COVID funds that came into our state, a majority of that flowed through those non-construction projects and established. So next slide, please. So, I think one of the points that I did want to emphasize is, while the EDA investments have been consistent, we do have looming threats such as climate change. And this is right on our front door. And that is especially a huge threat to Hawaii's economy and to Oahu's economy. A recent study estimates economic loss just by sea level rise alone to be, it's like $13 billion, so a significant amount of economic loss. And when we look at that on a per capita basis compared to other US territories, particularly in the Pacific, we are not leveraging EDA funds enough to do that. So, this kind of shows on the left side, where the EDA awards have gone over the last 10 years. The city and county of Honolulu is misleading because basically that is the geography, right? And that includes investments made to both the UH as well as to state government. If you shift your attention to the right, county governments have only received $3 million out of that entire pie over the last 10 years. And that's been across 3 projects, all on Hawaii Island. Next slide, please. And a big reason for this is because the EDA funding is largely dependent on economic distress criteria as defined by the EDA. The picture on the left shows that Honolulu County is actually not eligible for their primary programs. So this is their public works and their economic adjustment assistance programs, which they call their bread and butter programs. It's where they make the majority of their investments. Honolulu County is not eligible, and in fact, Hawaii County is the only county that's eligible. And this is a little bit of a moving target, but this just kind of gives you a sense that generally Honolulu is not eligible. But when you break out the distress criteria by census tract, all of the areas that are highlighted in the blue on the right, you see that there is economic distress in our community. We see that, we feel that, we know that. So the stuff on the left doesn't actually tell the story of economic distress and need in our community and the need for EDA investments in our community. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do we unlock more EDA funds for our state and for city and county of Honolulu? So as a precondition for EDA funds, the EDA requires the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or CEDS for short. And this is something that, I think most of you are probably familiar with, have probably participated in some capacity on the Strategic Advisory Committee. So Hawaii has had a CEDS, which is a 5-year cluster-based strategic plan since 2005. And that includes both a statewide plan as well as individual county plans. And those individual county plans have been shepherded by the county economic development boards, of course, with partnership and participation with the county economic development offices. Next slide, please. The CEDS is also a precondition for a program called an economic development district. So this is again an EDA program. And what it is it's a recognition or designation by the EDA based on the economic linkages within a particular region. So an EDD particularly is comprised of multiple counties. It's comprised of multiple counties, so it's not a single county designation, it's multiple county designation. And given that Hawaii only has 4 counties and we're the most isolated geography, economy anywhere. It really makes sense for there to be a statewide economic development district designation. And the other important thing to note is that counties can only participate in a single economic development district. So really a statewide economic development district, the partnership between the 4 counties in the state is really the way to move forward on this. There are many benefits to an economic development district designation. Primarily is eligibility. It broadens the eligibility for EDA programs within the region. So if you think back to that, kind of slide of with the map and, just showing the ineligibility of all of the counties except for Hawaii County, an EDD designation basically provides a pre-approval. The EDA provides a pre-approval for the eligibility of the district on the basis of economic linkages within that district. So it increases eligibility for projects that on a standalone basis might not otherwise be eligible. It improves coordination by providing persistent planning and by supporting persistent planning and implementation. It strengthens and codifies the relationship that our region will have with the EDA. And EDA is a very relationship-based, trust-based type of federal agency, which is maybe weird to say about a federal agency. But in that, is EDA confidence and trust to be able to weight projects coming out of an economic development district more highly. And then last, and I'll speak on this a little bit more in a couple slides, is that it strengthens the local capacity to maximize the drawdown of federal funds, and that includes both government and non-government capacity. Slide, please. And just to underscore, really kind of in dollars and cents, the benefit of an economic development district designation, the EDA investments within an EDD are significantly higher than on a per capita basis than projects that are located outside of an EDD, and again, in proportion to the share of the population. And that includes both construction and non-construction projects. So overall, what this shows is at the top line, 77% of grants and 71% of total EDA investments over the 2010 to 21 period went to projects within an EDD, and that's compared to only 52% of the share of population that those districts represent. Next slide, please. In terms of capacity building, really that comes in 4 functional areas, and this is something that OPSD would support through a dedicated program and staff. And so that includes economic research, planning, outreach and technical assistance, and tracking and evaluation. So this is really about bridging the gap between planning and implementation, and then supporting the local jurisdictions and nonprofit organizations, economic development organizations to implement against those plans. And then providing outreach and technical assistance to make funding opportunities known, to support and provide technical assistance for grants that are being proposed. And again, to leverage that EDA relationship to make these project proposals more competitive. Maybe the last thing just to note here is, this is a program with dedicated staff to support this on a continuous basis, but then also being done in partnership with the board. And the board would be a reflection of the broad economic interests across our state. And so it includes participation by the county governments. We of course look forward to being able to work more closely with OER in this capacity. Also the economic development boards, the workforce development boards, University of Hawaii, as well as labor unions. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the last slide, and where we'll end is where we stand in this designation process. So we have submitted a formal designation request to the EDA at the end of the year last year. Part of that is being reviewed, or excuse me, it is under review by the EDA's Seattle Regional Office. Right now, we are in the process of establishing the board through an intergovernmental agreement between the counties and the state. And so that will basically establish that partnership, formalize that partnership, that relationship, and the board for the Seattle Regional Office to then move forward with their legal review. But basically, the legal review is done pending the formation of the board. We had the opportunity and the privilege of meeting the EDA Seattle Regional Office Regional Director, as well as the Assistant Secretary over from DC on the headquarters side, who are the final pieces in the chain of command for the approval for this. And I think it's safe to say that they are supportive. And a big part of that also has been the support by, not only the counties, but our congressional delegation really pushing and advocating for this as well. So we hope, that we are close. We are looking forward to bringing this designation into our state as soon as possible, so that many of the programs that OER is working on would be eligible for EDA funds support. So we'll stop there and happy to answer any questions.
What's the time frame that you think that whole process will be complete?
I think it's hard to know for sure, and I don't know, Kyoki, not to put you on the spot, if you have any sense of the processing on the EDA side of, once we get that intergovernmental agreement into place. But our understanding is that, really all of the pieces are there, and it's just, once we get that that agreement in place, it's just a matter of going through kind of the internal processes of EDA to make those approvals.
In one of your slides, I guess the expectation is once we have that designation, there may be a 4x improvement in terms of the EDA grants per capita basis.
It's, because the EDA grants are competitive, we can't say for certain that, this designation will result in this, but it certainly makes projects more competitive. And a big part of that, again, is that increased eligibility of projects.
Sorry about this. I just figured out how to access the email that it's sending the codes to.
Anyone online have questions?
This is Melly. I don't have any right now. I know we've gone after some in the past, like with a kind of a hub and spoke, and Keone, I know we've done some work together, which I don't think has ever been approved. So ideally, with this new designation, and granted, I understand that it doesn't mean that we'll have more approvals, but ideally we'll also get some better guidance too, because I feel like better relationships with the EDA and having them more understand, and us being able to get better feedback may be helpful to have more alignment so that our projects can get through that are important for moving the economic development in the state.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a big part of that technical assistance component as well, right? Is to help the economic development organizations and implementers be successful in their proposals to the EDA.
I have one question. Why didn't we go for this designation before? Like, why not?
This is my personal reflection, because I did work on the 2005 sets and the 10 and the 15. We had such a great field representative for quite a while, Gail Fujita, and she never mentioned to us that this was an option. She just teed up projects and just helped us move them forward, as you guys may know. And so when Gail retired, Kyoki came on board. Kyoki has been really supportive of getting us to take this next step and to have Hawaii be eligible for more funds. The distress criteria, economic distress criteria, have always been difficult for Hawaii because we've always had fairly low unemployment rates because of just nationally, you know. So that doesn't fit the model that, you know, the EDA was built around, which was probably more TDA and, you know, that kind of stuff. It's an old, EDA is an old federal program for at least 50 years. And so in their model, high unemployment rates were the norm for areas they wanted to take grant awards for. But we managed, usually by going with those special conditions, which it's quite challenging to, you know, to get the documentation together to qualify for. So this would be a huge improvement in terms of just accessibility for these grant funds.
And then on the implementation side too, right? Imagine going out and saying, hey, we have this great tool, but oh, sorry, you're not eligible.
Right.
Because you live across the street.
Which is exactly what,
Yeah.
unfortunately, what happened.
Sorry. Anybody else have questions for?
How is this relevant to us?
We are.
You know, what specific things can we do
Funny.
this that we can't do now? I mean,
We'll be eligible for more money to
what kinds of things will we do with the money? Like,
As you heard, there are several different programs that EDA gets fairly consistent funding for, with the exception of COVID, where they got a huge amount of funding. And the one that is big dollars mostly is the Public Works Fund, which allows the workies to build facilities to support economic development and training. So if you workforce training, the Culinary Institute is a good example of workforce training for supports our visitor industry. You know, the Sandbox, as you know, is got a tech focus. The Foreign Trade Center is an export focus. So I see that that's one,
Of course, yeah.
you know, that's a real advantage. And
One
the
of
other-
our
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if it's strategic plan, but one of our action items is to look at building incubators in Hawaii. We don't have to be the builder, but we want to make it happen because we like, for example, what Manup's doing, but we need more Manup type programs in different sectors. So that's possible, this
Yes.
program.
And then one of my favorites, it's not quite as forward as that, is healthcare. So a lot of the Waianae Comprehensive Health Center facilities have been built with EDA Public Works funds. And as you know, they provide better paying jobs for folks in the Waianae area. There's a career pathway. You know, when you start as a medical assistant, you can move up to RN or advanced practice RN. You've got and those at the higher end of those career pathways are actually living wages for Hawaii. So I see that as an opportunity. Those healthcare facilities have been built on the Big Island. Bay Clinic got funding for that. I think Amy knows a little bit about some of these because when she was working in Washington, she saw some of those funds flowing to all across the board. So-
Another possibility, like for us, that we're currently working on with UH and their chancellor, I don't even know what Basilis's title is, but under that, there's the director of innovation. And so we've identified a city-owned space, like they'd love to use our property. So that's, we get to work with them. And we own a ton of retail spaces in Chinatown. We own a lot of lands and other things that we could develop, but we need partners to do that, right? We don't presume that we can do everything. So we've located this harbor village right at the corner of Nimitz and River Street. And their goal is to make a maritime innovation center and like 3D workspace right there. So they'd like it really close to Honolulu Harbor. This is one of the areas that UHERO and others have identified for economic opportunity for Hawaii. So we're just kind of like, we have a lot of land, we have a lot of vacant spaces. We bought a lot of properties recently in the city. So they're getting some planning money, hopefully from an earmark. Then they'll have to fix up that space. So they'll have to get another earmark. They think they could get the third earmark. They see the whole path. But ultimately, what could sustain a place like that for maybe 10 years would be this type of funding, right? Like, but it would be beyond just this one place. Hopefully, there's a sector through the EDD that we could develop collectively over time. So let's say this is one of the hubs, and there's something else in Kilo that we work collectively with DVEC on. So there's little glimmers of hope to see what are possibilities. And I think, you know, the more we brainstorm and put proposals together as a collective EDD, if and when this can happen, the more opportunities that I think will spring out of it. But which leads to.
Thank you, Lauren, Mary Alice. All right, so next, speaking of EDA, we have Kyoki from the Economic Development Administration. Kyoki, the floor is yours.
Mahalo, Lynn. And we'll go through this very quickly. Lauren did a great job of touching on much of the kind of EDD benefits, the process. So, please feel free to jump in at any time. Ask me any questions you might have. Also, just to quickly kind of address some of the questions that already came out. You know, talking to some of the more experienced EDRs, economic development representatives. That's my position. Talking to some of the more experienced ones, they're saying once the official EDD designation request gets to headquarters, it can take up to 9 months. Actually, 9 months might be kind of on the faster side. You know, we have a few things going for us. We have some disasters in the region, not only the Lahaina fire, but even the typhoon in Guam and other happenings in the Pacific that have been bringing us more attention than we might normally have. So, you know, you never know, the designation process request could go through more quickly, but yeah, just wanted to give you folks a heads up on that, manage some expectations. Again, we've touched on a lot of this already, but just to kind of highlight again, you know, eligibility, especially for projects within the city and county of Honolulu. Lots of times, if you wanted to have a project that serviced all of Oahu, you would have to use special needs criteria, whether it be out migration or shutting down of a major employer, things like that. And then, you know, thinking about some of the national EDA grant competitions that come out of EDA headquarters, their notice of funding opportunities will go so far as to say, you know, applicants out of within EDDs, economic development districts, are automatically eligible. You know, that kind of takes away a lot of some administrative duties. Those not within officially designated EDDs have to jump through a lot more hoops to show eligibility. Lauren folks already talked about the coordination and technical assistance aspect. You know, through the EDD application, applicants can receive project development support, project application, actual writing support, things like that. So that's always really helpful too, especially for communities that might not have experience accessing federal funding. Also wanted to kind of add to what Kim said earlier about statewide program implementation. We were just talking to DBED about their RLFs, and this was just last week, and they were talking about, you know, how during the pandemic, because all areas became automatically eligible, that made project implementation, providing access to capital throughout Hawaii much more straightforward, a lot easier. You never had to worry about, you know, is this specific applicant coming out of these census tracts. So, you know, statewide program implementation or even just countywide implementation becomes a lot less complicated with official EDD designation. Now, other than that, I just wanted to highlight a few stats. Again, like Lauren said, you know, 78% of EDA grants went to areas covered by EDDs. That's a huge advantage. While you know, only 72% of the population live in areas with an EDD. Per capita, the number of EDA grants and the amount of total project costs invested in EDD areas is more than 3 times the number of grants and investments outside of EDDs. So again, it's all of those, though, a combination of all of those advantages. Plus, I think reviewers at EDA, they really feel more secure granting within EDDs because they feel it's a layer of vetting that they've already done. You know, to get that EDD designation is a pretty thorough, rigorous process. So the fact that they've already the region already has that EDD designation is almost kind of very much a running head start into future applications. Next slide, please. Okay, we can jump through this very quickly. Next slide, please. So again, like Lauren highlighted already, these are the most typical and largest EDA regular grant programs, regular meaning steady state, not tied to disaster supplemental funding, for example. So again, public works is what most people think of when they think of the Economic Development Administration. Lots of times these are larger construction or infrastructure improvement grants. Economic Adjustment Assistance, or EAA as they call it, is a very flexible grant program. It's generally lower grant amounts, maybe 2 million at the very high end. While they still can be construction, these are often non-construction project implementation grants, or they can also be large marketing study, feasibility studies, all the way down to individual business plans and things like that. Next slide, please. Oh, and then for this section, talking to Amy and Kim, we were just trying to brainstorm, maybe highlight past projects that might align with what OER is trying to do, what some of the mission and goal of the department is. So I tried really to focus on equitable economic development, inclusive entrepreneurship, small business and finance, also innovation and technology and workforce development. So next slide, please. So this is one that was just awarded last year. Again, this is out of disaster supplemental funding. So the eligibility criteria and some of the economic outputs required are a little bit loosened due to disaster recovery. But this example, it's an entrepreneurship center that provides professional training, consulting, access to capital, a support network for entrepreneurs. And they specifically focus on those entrepreneurs and small businesses that may have been discriminated in the past by race, gender, sexual orientation, economic income levels, immigration status, or past incarceration. So again, just wanted to highlight the type of project that could be possible. The total project cost for this one was about $550,000, with EDA covering $440,000. Huge economic impact numbers. Again, a big challenge for us here in the Pacific, where the cost of living is so much higher. It can be difficult to create permanent jobs, especially of this magnitude, 200 jobs created, 150 jobs saved. Those are huge economic outputs coming from a relatively small EDA award. Again, we're working with the folks at not only the regional level, but also the headquarter level to understand that these figures, it's a lot easier to do this on the mainland than it is here in the middle of the Pacific. Next slide, please. Just one more quick example, the SOVA Innovation Hub. This is a renovation of an existing building that had a very completely different purpose, and they're turning this into an innovation lab. A lot of what they're trying to do with this project is providing access to services. So things like 3D printing, scanners, podcasting studio, green screens, all types of different technologies that folks especially in this rural area, would not have access to, co-working spaces. Maybe in urban Honolulu would be more common, but if you go out to more rural places, it's more difficult to find these types of amenities. Also highlighted through this project was the flexibility aspect of it and providing access to those that might not otherwise have a chance to be entrepreneurs, those that are stay-at-home parents or have young children and would have a hard time working regular 9 to 5 hours, for example. Again, this project too has some pretty significant economic outputs, economic outcomes, 130 jobs created or retained, and 1.1 million in private investments generated. Next slide, please. Okay, so now some not so fun stuff. I apologize for not better news for some of these updates. Next slide, please. Okay, the first one's not too bad. EDA has a new grants management system. It's called EDGE. Previously, all applicants would have to apply through Grants Online, grants.gov, and then the grants manager assigned to the application would have to use OPCS. So two different systems that did not talk to each other, very clunky, very inefficient, very typical of federal government, some might say. The new Edge system is all inclusive. So the front end user and the back end user will have access to the same system. It is only a couple of months old though, so please bear with us as the IT team continues to work through bugs and continues to try to improve the system overall. One slide back, please. There's a small, in terms of funding, there is a very small amount of planning and local technical assistance funds available, something less than $500,000. Lauren and Mary Alice and I have talked a little bit about this, potentially using this to kind of prepare for EDD rollout. You know, we'd have to frame it, call it something a little bit different, maybe capacity building, something along those lines, but that would fit in our planning and local technical assistance program. Below that, we are still awaiting potential FY24 disaster supplemental funding, unfortunately, you know, given the significant major disasters that have occurred throughout the Pacific. We were hoping that, you know, funding would come down more quickly. We're well past the halfway point of FY24, and you know, some of the more pessimistic folks up at headquarters are thinking we might have to wait until after the election now to access FY24 disaster supplemental funding. That would be very disappointing, but you know, in the meantime, trying to prep as many potential applicants as we can. So as soon as that funding does become available, we have some applications ready to go, hopefully access that funding as quickly as possible. In terms of FY24 Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistance Program, again, Lauren mentioned that's that's the normal, largest, regular, steady state EDA program. We are still, actually, we know how much funding is coming down to the regional level. We just need the okay to award that. Unfortunately, what has happened though is competitive applications have been building up through the first half of this federal fiscal year. So that means as soon as the funding hits our regional office level, essentially all of it will go out the door because so many competitive applications are already waiting. I just checked in with some of the finance folks at the regional office, and there's something like just $1 million remaining that hasn't been recommended for award, but that doesn't take into consideration 2 more investment review committee meetings happening in May and June. So guarantee all of the FY24 Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistance funding will be recommended for award in the next couple of months. So what that means is those competitive applications that continue to come in before the end of this federal fiscal year will automatically be rolled over to FY25 funding once it becomes available. Sorry, that was a lot to go over in a very short amount of time, but if anybody has any questions, either now or even if you want to connect with me afterwards, I've provided my contact information on the last slide.
Anyone online have questions for Kyoki? And Kyoki, is your Kuleana just Hawaii, or you gave some examples on the continent?
Thanks for that question. It's all of the Pacific. So for me, I am the only economic development representative. That's just a super fancy way to say customer service rep. I'm the pre-award person that folks can contact with questions about funding and project development if they want me to take a look at their application before they send it to the regional office. But basically my area is Hawaii, American Samoa, Guam, the CNMI, FSM, RMI, and the Republic of Palau. So pretty big service area.
Who's currently in Guam.
And then the region, so that's a good question too. Our region, we're actually part of the Seattle Regional Office. So that's the entire West Coast, Alaska, plus Nevada and Idaho. So those, whenever we have regional programs, that's who we are competing with technically.
Who makes the ultimate call on the EDA grants? Is that through the Seattle office or is that in DC?
That's a great question. So for our regional programs, like our public works and our economic adjustment assistance, that actually goes to our investment review committee. It's a rotating cast of folks, higher up folks at the Seattle regional office. And then for the larger national grant programs, just as an example, the Good Jobs Challenge, the Recompete, Tech Hubs, also the Economic Recovery Corps, which OER successfully got. Those go straight to EDA headquarters. So we don't have any control of that at the regional office, unfortunately. I think the main disadvantage is it's hard for us to get updates on things like budget, how many applications are coming in, things like that. Whereas at the regional level, if you have questions on any of our programs, please feel free to contact me. Always happy to tell you, how much budget, how much funding I think is remaining, how many applications have been coming in. That type of information is super helpful given that our NOFOs, our notice of funding opportunities, are all rolling deadlines. So it creates kind of unusual funding and competitive dynamics.
Okay, thank you, Kyoki.
No problem. Okay, do you see a lot of local organizations that should qualify or try to go after some EDA funding, but they're short on skills or experience? Like looking at that gap. You notice anything like that?
In terms of skills and experience, I give the nonprofit sector and the local governments a lot of credit. I definitely see, applicants out of other areas that have much less capacity, much less experience accessing federal funds. But when you go to maybe more rural areas or folks with less experience trying to apply for federal grants, I think some of that does come up, and I think the technical assistance and the capacity building could help in those areas.
Okay, Lauren pointed out that I guess the county governments don't really go after these funds or receive EDA funds. So is that a pretty good opportunity for us to start looking at?
Yeah, I think there's a number of factors. One is eligibility. The map that Lauren had, for example, if you want to city and county-wide for Honolulu or Maui County, for example, we're not eligible just because our unemployment rate is too low and our per capita income is too high. So certainly an EDD would be helpful in that regard. And then, helping with the economic recovery following the fires. Just everybody is just so overworked and understaffed. Capacity is just a huge issue too. So that's why folks like the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii, the economic development boards, those types of organizations that the county can partner with at times, maybe even contract, is super helpful because like Eliza folks, they have the connections directly to the businesses, directly to the communities, and lots of times the county doesn't have the capacity to do that.
Anyone else have questions for Kyoki?
Kyoki, I'm curious how the revolving loan fund works.
So the revolving loan funds, and I'm by no means an expert on this, but the DBED, for example, has been successful. They're just about to they've actually awarded all of their revolving loans, and now they're in the maturity phase. So essentially, you apply. In terms of specific for the EDA, our RLFs come through our Economic Adjustment Assistance Program. So just like any other of our grant programs, it's a competitive application process. I think DBED now, for example, they have a leg up because they have a good track record of implementing these revolving loans, providing access to those that might not have access to capital through more traditional routes. They were just sharing recently, again, tracking the EDA type economic outputs. They were saying that they've had a lot of success in value-added ag, manufacturing, wholesaling. These are folks that need access to capital and create a lot of jobs, have huge economic impacts, but are struggling to access capital. So really appreciate those that apply for our RLFs because they do provide a lot of economic growth. I think something that's pretty new with EDA is 7 years after award, you're able to defederalize the funds. So no reporting, don't have to pay back anything. They can just keep it revolving after 7 years now, which is great, and you can still come in for more EDA grant funding after that.
That's terrific. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, thank you, Kyoki.
No, thank you, folks. Appreciate you folks making the time.
So moving on the agenda, the next item, Greg is not here. So we'll skip Greg for now. Let's see what's after that. Does anybody have any commission member or he's back? Right, Greg, you're up for the next agenda.
Oh,
item.
great.
Yep.
Thank you, Mary Alice and Lauren.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Please take the food sitting in front of you. That's for you. No, we don't need it.
Yes.
No, it'll go to waste. Go give it to your staff.
Oh, wait.
No, nothing. I think we're going. Each of them.
Yes.
Let's see. It's 10. Oh, maybe 2. Yeah. Okay. What about this? Oh, you can't get.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Greg, the floor is yours.
All right.
And I think your document is on the screen.
Yeah,
Is it being shared, Kate?
that's unfortunate. I'm not sure that's a good way to read it, but I'm going to assume you had a chance to look at this. I'll just kind of walk through some main points here. Procurement is something we've discussed since almost the very beginning, you know, as something that might improve. I guess I would preface this by saying that when I went to the council, when I interviewed, I think all of you, you know, I think they really encourage us to think big, go bold, do things different. And so I feel like, well, that's just my nature anyway, so I don't feel any bar to doing that. And the only consequence of that might not be good is we could fail. That's okay. You feel it a lot, right? A few times every day. So, so anyway, I think we should just go for it. Now, when I was asked to take a look at this, I started looking at the laws. I'm like, oh my gosh, I mean, if you're a lawyer, you know, it's horrible. So I thought, well, that's not the right approach. And also, you get mired in details. And so what I think we should do is think, well, what is it that we want to do before we start thinking about why we can't do it. So when I surveyed what other counties and states are doing, you know, they're doing a lot, and it's detailed in this first page, kind of listed, but you know, and some of them are pretty aggressive that I think maybe might be, you know, I don't mind failing, but I don't want to plan to fail. You know, it's like I'd like to do something that could work, and so and the memo details some of the economic benefits of hiring local, contracting locally. I think it's pretty obvious what they are. You know, there's multiplier effects, there's all kinds of things. And so, and I detailed that, I put more detail in the memo from last time, which I think I didn't meet the deadline. So there's some links in here if you want to have a look. But I think it warrants further work and review. And, you know, I don't necessarily can't conclude now what we should do. What I'm just proposing is that we take next steps in considering what to do. So, you know, we could do it different ways. I'm not wed to the idea of a pig, but I thought that might be a good way at least to produce some additional work. Come back to the commission with some specific ideas on what, you know, maybe a small group of us might think is a good idea. At that point, I mean, personally, I'm leaning towards a discount to a local business. And the range that I read about is 5 to 25%, depending on where you're going. I think, you know, 25% might be a little high. And you have to balance it against the need to spend tax dollars wisely. Sorry.
It's in the fridge.
If you make the preference too large, then you might be overpaying for things. I mean, you know, I had this saying that you taught me this way back when, but it applies to a lot of things. Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. So that's how I counsel entrepreneurs. You know, you can be greedy, but don't be overly greedy, right? Because then you'll just get slaughtered. So I think even 5% would be better than nothing. And it's also sends a positive message to our community that we're behind them, that we have their backs, we want them to do well. You have to combine it with other things, which I think some of what you're already doing, communications programs, things like, it's not all just about the money. The money is an important piece of it. When we decide what we want to do, then we can kind of more look at the details of how we implement it. And I don't know what point we would involve the city's lawyers or how that would work, if they outsource it to a law firm. I don't know. I mean, I could do a lot of that work, but I think probably you need to go through proper procedures, just so that when you get to the council with the bill, it's been vetted, it's cleared. I mean, there's some legal issues, right, to local preferences and things, but I think the cases show that they can stand up. Anyway, so that's kind of
That's somebody's dressing.
Oh, is it not? Yeah, that's not. Kim's
it's
on
okay,
it.
we can use it anyway.
Somebody will be,
So I guess my recommendation is that we consider forming a permitted interaction group to study this. I've listed some specific things that a group could look at. Would be, I don't know all the answers to these specifically, but what does the city do now? I think my understanding is there's some general language that says you can consider, but that's subjective, and it's not like saying you have to credit them 10% on their bid. That's pretty specific, right? So I'm not sure what happens, but we should understand that. And then we should look at, well, survey all the different preferences. What is the preference or preferences that we want to consider? For example, they give preferences in certain places for minorities, for disabled people, etc. So there's a lot. I think I would focus mostly on economics. That's just how I feel right now. Also, I think you don't want to overcomplicate things, because the chances of getting through are probably a lot lower if you're like asking for 4 preferences or something. If you just keep it simple, we want this one thing, it's going to help local business, boom, it's easy to implement. I mean, I think there's some legal issues there, what is a local business, right? I mean, but that's been solved, we're not the first ones to do this. I don't know why we're not doing it already, actually, and then the group will come back to the commission with some further action items, And I view that as maybe it could happen within a few months, it doesn't have to be. I think there's a lot of research out there, but I think that the PIC members have to be able to read the research and study it with the time in. I mean, I could do this myself, but it's probably better if it was a broader group of people. Not only just for me, but for buy-in and credibility and things like that. Yeah. So, anyway, any reactions or? So I guess your ideas.
Timing, Greg, are you thinking the PIG would work over the next 3 months and have something in writing?
Is the next meeting in 3 months?
2 months.
Oh, I think you could have something by then. So it could meet, a few times at least, but I mean, put the homework in, meet, kick it around, go back, think about it, and then maybe after, gel, kind of come up with something that. And it doesn't have to be the only preference we give, forever. This could be a first step, right? If it works out well, that worked out pretty good. Maybe we'll consider other things.
And Amy and Kim, are there kinds of policies that are like this right now, or?
So there are some things that, Kim could maybe speak to some, but, you sort of have to be good at procurement. I would say one of the things you put in here, Greg, training, which is both internal, for us and for other city entities that do much bigger, larger contracts, would be like just training on the basics. And I think because Kim has been procuring a while, we'll say you must have 10 years of experience in this area, right? Which means hopefully, I'm drafting one that just, you couldn't come up with anyone else to do food security other than the food bank, right? Like, no one else has been distributing food, to the capacity that they have island-wide for. So if you know the area that you're working, sometimes they can be written in such a way that excludes.
Sole source.
Yes, but, so I think I will say that I feel like there's tips and tricks to better accomplish local preference, but they are not necessarily written into our practices. They are not shared and taught to people how to use them. I will say one of my friends at Corporation Council is working on a local, what do they call it, workforce agreement. And so the city administration has been working with some of the labor unions to make, to like require that contracts of a certain size for a certain type of work or construction have union workers. And so, business can have multiple opinions about the utility of that or the value of that. Certainly it can be good for wages. On the other hand, it could exclude some local businesses that are non-union. So there's all kinds of different things. And I don't know if Kim wants to add to this, but I didn't come to the city to, like apply to be a director stating like, I'm a professional at procurement. Like we have winged it and done the best we could and honestly like got a lot of dollars out, made a lot of mistakes along the way. We have professionals that help us do this in the Office of Budget and Fiscal Services and the Department of Corporation Council. But there is nothing that would be approved through the city that doesn't go through Corporation Council and isn't worked with and approved by VFS. We can't propose something that the managing director doesn't, agree with or isn't on the same page for. We could probably get a council member to put forward the legislation if we wanted to. But I will just say that I've sent your memo with some questions to our current interim chief of procurement to ask her, what can you tell us in terms of what already exists? And I think that would be something that even if she provides comments, that would be best digested in a PIG or in some way that, we can have a conversation about that and come to some sort of agreement like you said, there's one or two we should pursue. These others, they kind of already exist as in this way. And then other things we could take up, like the training, I think with small businesses, we could execute through Oahu Business Connector or other things too. Other, I don't know, the Mana Ups and the Hawaii Investment Readies and the Purple Lions of the world to like get this information out too. But also,
I would just add, I think procurement is very layered, and I think a PIG is probably the best way to do this because there's so many questions that are going to come every time you get an answer. And it's going to take a while to get through all of those layers. There's different methods of procurement, which have different rules, right? There's different sources of funding which have different rules. And so having any kind of blanket is one thing, blanket policy by all means. I think we at OER want to support local, right? That's what we're here to do. And so we want to step to the plate and say, not only are we telling everybody else to do it, we're doing it for sure. But sometimes federal money comes with requirements that you can't do that, and so there's some of these little nuances in there as well. And just kind of getting through all of those layers. I feel like every time I do a procurement, I learn a new rule, when you look at even just buying property, and the mix of funds and the percentages that you can do this, but you can't do this, and you can do this, and you can't do this. It gets just so complicated. But that doesn't mean we stop there, right? So I think there's a lot to this. I frankly think it could take more than 3 months if we really want to do this well.
Do we have to specify the period, or if it takes more, can we just take more time?
it depends on the process. Like, could we do it within internal administrative rules? that would be maybe quicker.
Oh, you mean
easier.
the pig process?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
the
the
big
pig- the
process,
pig
let's say
deadline.
we
Oh.
gotta report back next meeting, could we report back that we need more time, or do we have to like finish it by then?
I honestly think it'd be longer than next meeting. It's just
Well, we can report on the status.
Well, I would,
Right.
yeah, and I think,
maybe 2 meetings.
and maybe it's, yeah, you do a status report and then a final report or something like that, right? And give yourself a little bit of time, and then if you report early, you know, you met the deadline, so.
Do you
by
think
year
that
end-
getting something like this through is gonna be a push, or do you think there'll be a lot of support for it, or?
I think in the conversations that I've had with the people that have been doing procurement for a long time, one specific guy asked if there's anything you could change, what would you change? You know, because you're constantly on the phone with me trying to educate me, so like, what would you change? And this person actually said, not a lot, because the ambiguity actually gives us more flexibility, right? Where sometimes if you get too prescriptive, then you don't have that flexibility. So I think from a political, do we want to support local? I think there's a spirit there, but then it goes back to what are the rules of the funding, right? So whoever's giving you the money is gonna have their own rules,
So it could be administrative rules, as Kim says,
Yeah.
that
for sure.
apply to X, Y, and Z procurements, right? Or procurement of a certain amount and above, or a certain amount and below. One way we could also discuss is just a reso that, you know, we draft for the council, or a commission member drafts for a council member, whereas, you know, some of the things you put in here in terms of the value of local preference, the potential, maybe some data as to potential impact in places where certain policies have been put in place, and the council could pass a resolution encouraging the city to do more around local procurement preference. And then that, you know, could also set in motion, like, then they could require a report to come back, you know, from these offices, Office of Economic Revitalization, Budget and Finance, Corporation Council, any others that might make sense to like, let's say, how are we gonna do this? By what mechanism are we gonna implement it, and when can we expect the first?
I think there's value in doing an assessment of what is being done now. Right, we're presuming that not a lot is being done, but that may not be the case, right? I do want to add another layer to this, is that the city generally follows the state procurement guidelines.
Yeah.
Right, so this is frankly a little bit bigger than just the city, when we want to take this on, but it has to start somewhere, right?
We don't, that doesn't mean that we're subject to the state rules, we can do our own thing too, right? It just chooses to follow the state rules.
Yes,
So
it just,
you can choose not to in certain ways.
and then that goes into the legal part of that, I think, more than.
Is that actually possible for us to not be adhering to state rules? Because Kim, I feel like you're sharing differently with your nonverbal communication.
So the city has chosen to follow the state procurement rules. If we chose to have our own procurement rules, that's a whole nother gnarly process, right?
But this would require revamping the entire procurement system, right? What we're
Yeah.
talking about now, it's
Yeah.
just one provision.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depends on what the big comes up.
Hey, Greg, when you were talking, did you talk with anyone, or was it more online research as to what other municipalities are doing from
Yeah,
a procurement standpoint?
I think having some Zoom meetings with other
Mhm.
entities would be a good thing, you know, but yeah, it was all basically online research.
Okay. Yeah, because I think if we had some Zoomies, I totally agree. Like, the question I always initially ask is like, how have people tried to game the system, and how can we make sure we put some protections in place so that this truly is, you know, opening doors for folks and that's kind of the original intent, you know? But yeah, I would be down to be part of some of those as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just open a branch and say you're local government, so.
Yeah, well, there has to be a level of service reliability and risk limiting to the city, right? Not just gonna say we're gonna give it to local and then, you know, not have.
Well, the
quality
preference,
product.
you wouldn't get it unless you had the lowest bid with the discount. So you can't determine, you're gonna give it to them.
Depends on the method of procurement. Because over certain amounts you end up at scoring, right? So then your percentage of score, may not still fully impact that.
Right, but your price, the price element will be 5% less. And then it's still in the hopper.
Yes,
However it comes out.
but
it comes out.
if whoever sets up the scoring, 10% is based on price. And
Oh, I know. You
40%
you
is
might
based on
still not win,
experience, you still.
but you have a better chance at winning.
You have a little bit of an upper hand, yeah. So depends on, like I said, it's super layered. We're not gonna solve it all here, and these are, I think, that's why I think you kind of go into the pig and be like, okay, these are the 4 areas we wanna tackle next, right?
Now, the process that Amy mentioned, that's not the only way you do it, right?
No, it was
'Cause that
just an
sounds-
idea
It's giving
that,
me a headache, thinking about that. Well, because I mean, you're throwing it out there,
it's all gonna be a headache,
oh, I
right?
know. But I wanna define the headache. So I wanna say, another way of doing it is, couldn't the OER just submit a bill? Or get a council member to say, okay, we wanna pass this law, and we're gonna give this.
We
preference.
would not be allowed to do so in the way that we operate without the agreement of our boss, the mayor,
Okay,
which means,
whatever you need to internally to make it happen, but you could draft your own idea of what the preference could be, rather than just throwing it out there to different offices to say, what do you think we should do? Then come back after the resolution, and then everyone, that sounds like a really long process too.
Well, we couldn't do it without corporate counsel and
Oh, yeah,
budget
yeah.
fiscal services, and those are the experts in this area, so we definitely need to have them.
it'd be like
Yeah.
if Budget and Fiscal Services said, we are going to determine economic development policy and pass a resolution at the council and then never consult us on it.
Right,
It
it's
just
gonna
doesn't,
impact.
wouldn't work that way.
Yeah. So coordinate with them to make sure it's feasible and, but we wouldn't necessarily have to do it with the resolution approach.
No,
Ask each
I
agency
mean, if it's
something.
possible to do it by administrative rules, we have to figure out if they've done this before, like I said, that workforce agreement is going to the city council. So that's one way that they're trying to change procurement currently,
Okay.
that's underway. So these things,
Well, that's-
it wouldn't be like a first.
But that's the next stage anyway. Right now, it's just like, what do we think we want to do?
Yeah.
And then we'll figure out how can we do that.
Right.
best.
Because I do think there are some levers in place that are just not utilized or not known well, that they're sort of like, well, if you, I mean, people have told me this about lawyers, like, there's a lot of lawyers that will tell you what you can't do. Well, you can't do it that way, you can't do it that way, and they'll never ask you, what are you trying to accomplish? And then I can help you, right? So to me, it's like either side of the coin here.
I should send them my margin article that came out last month called Impact Lawyering. It's lawyering to make a difference. But yeah, I mean, we'll get through the legal, I can help out there.
Well, regardless of how the process goes, it sounds like it's going to take a lot of interdepartmental collaboration and capacity beyond what, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but it sounds like beyond what the members of this commission could do ourselves. And so what is the best process on your folks' side to enable that collaboration to happen so that we can pull the necessary information, have access to the capacity to do this type of research and all those kind of things? It sounded like the reso was one idea, like
Well,
take it to
no,
the
I think
council.
the permitted interaction group is the way that you start, the understanding, information gathering, the collaboration. I mean, I would see multiple Zooms with BFS to determine, what's already happening, what's available with like either the National League of Cities or National Association of Counties, whoever, to go and find us a municipality or two that could talk to us about something that they've done either recently or historically, right? So we could walk through challenges and or, benefits of the many different options that you just researched. So I think there's a significant amount of information gathering that would have to be done if we want to do this one.
Well, I feel like let the pig give it a try. If it's not gonna too much work, it'll come back and say, no, can't. But I feel like a small group of people can get a lot of stuff done versus when we bring in sometimes a lot of people, nothing gets done, so less gets done. And so I think if we have the right people who are motivated, we can push it along, and like I said earlier, it's risky and it might not work, but it's never stopped me before,
I think as far as timing, so if you did want to stand up a pig, I just want to throw this out for your consideration, is that we are nearing the end of our fiscal year. So that means there's a whole lot happening in procurement right now, trying to spend some money. But then when come June, when the final budget gets approved, they've got to put all of that into the system. So our budget and fiscal services, like the month of June and early July, is pretty tapped out. So just kind of taking that into consideration as we're working through the timing in this. But yeah, I think we can definitely help out with getting all of those entities. There's a group called NASBO, so the National Association of State Procurement Officers. That we can ask them too, what do you guys think on a national level, or who are some folks that are doing this? And so, we can help facilitate those Zoom calls and those discussions. Just how do we do that?
I just want to learn what the best practices are.
Yeah. I think the Bloomberg team also would be happy to help us.
It's, I think, a great thing to do for people of Hawaii. And, I don't know if anyone else is interested in doing this too. I mean, I might be the only one that's. I don't know. Did Melly say she would work with me? She said something. We'll assume. What do we need? Up to 3 people? What is
I think
it's no more than 4.
Yeah.
Because of
You
the
can't
size
have
of,
a
you can't
quorum.
have a quorum, but you may as well have 3, because 2 of you can talk anyway. And it doesn't.
That's true.
3 or 4,
Kim,
and
Kim
then
and Amy, before we do that, on the grant RFP that we put out, did any issue come up that was interesting? Like, did we get a lot of state applicants or?
We received 2 applicants. One was a consortium of a couple of different companies, and one was an individual. So we are waiting for the signature, but the consortium has a really great breadth of national visibility. It's a national firm with a local office and local staffing that have helped other municipalities just across the board, have helped nonprofits. One of the team members is a former city and county deputy director. And so they bring that breadth of having worked within city government and understanding the procurement and all that goes into that. And then another one is somebody that came from the state and worked on a lot of, let me see this without giving it away yet, because we haven't signed the contract, so I can't quite say, but has worked on some procurement with federal grants from the state perspective.
And the individual was a local company?
It was basically a one person, and she's like, if I need more people, we'll do grant writing, but didn't really have the breadth. And yes, it was a local person. It also local nonprofits, looked really successful in that, but didn't really have the depth to build the tools, the templates, the learning lab that we were looking for. But I think if we were just looking for a grant writer, she probably would have been fine. Or she or he.
I think the preference works well when all things being equal. It's just a price difference.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to have to pick someone that's not qualified.
Well, like Kyoki was saying, just getting even EDA to understand our income to debt ratios and cost of living and all of those kind of things, how do we take that into consideration too?
Yeah.
And then when we talked about, a year ago, we were talking about circular economy, so keep that money here.
How about those of you guys on the call? You guys have questions or interest in joining a pig?
I have interest.
All right.
I'll help too if you need me.
Myself, really?
Okay.
Oh, I think you actually have the JD, right, too?
I'm a big supporter of this. I do not have the time to help with it right now, which is why I asked about what capacity is.
I think 3 is good. More want to come on, please.
Can the pig form with 3 and another join if there's like partial interest?
You have to have a movement.
Next meeting.
Yeah.
So we also have to provide a clear set of instructions for the pig. And so Greg does have some recommendations. And I would suggest that you look at those recommendations on page 4 and determine if this is what you guys think that the pig should be instructed to do, or if you have edits to that.
So assuming everybody online has a copy of the recommendation. Great. So Amy, you're suggesting if this recommendation stands without edits, then this would be entered into the meeting as the big description creator. Any edits or changes?
Greg, are you talking about the Word document that was submitted?
Yeah, actually, it was
Okay.
a PDF, but yeah,
Oh, yeah, sorry, the PDF.
it's under recommendation. 1,
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
okay.
Now, I'd be particularly interested to seeing how the good jobs framework that departments have already been working on could fit into an incentive program. Obviously, maybe less straightforward than just the price discount, but maybe a more holistic, impact-oriented type of considerations.
So you're talking
Not
about.
to add that to here, but
Yeah,
just
yeah. So you're talking about like number 3, like what are we gonna recommend, right? That's where we come in, 3A.
yeah, possible.
All right, so if we have no edits, do we have a motion to form a pig with members Eliza, Millie, and Greg with the recommendation as outlined by the document that was submitted by Greg?
So moved.
Do we have a second? No, Keone, second. Great. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, so we now have a pig.
So I can just reach out to them and schedule meetings and stuff, right? Doesn't have to be. Okay, I'll be in touch with you guys and
Well, I will help to coordinate
Sounds good.
through the office and
sorry,
either Kim or I
really.
and or a staff person will be
Oh, yeah.
involved.
Oh, okay, so.
That's
you'll be-
exciting.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. That's a lot of work that you put in. You know, you wanted to see this happen and you made it happen, and I'm really looking forward to
Sure.
seeing what you guys can come up with. But thank you for putting in the extra work.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg.
Oh, yeah, let's go do something.
I echo that. This is really important stuff, so thank you. for
Yeah,
that.
I mean, even just perception wise. By the way, you know, HEDC, we just hired a search firm through this process, state process. And, you know, there were several choices and we had to go with the cheapest one, I was told, even though we had different criteria. I'm like, really?
Depends on your method of procurement.
Yeah, but for smaller contracts, is it more like that, the bigger contracts?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay. So
It's
there's
just
certain
depends on
number
how you
of
put
them
it on,
price
right?
will matter, right? There's
Yeah.
some, like that one, the price was everything.
Yeah.
Even-
Like
So
our
you don't want to
facil-
get in trouble,
like
right?
our facilitator contract was like that.
Right.
But it speeds up the process. So if you go into where price is maybe not the number one thing and you have other criteria, it lengthens the process. So like our facilitator contract, we have on the street for a week or 10 days. Our grants contractor, we have on the street for 45 days. Now granted, that was much bigger value, but there's just different methods that you can use that then tie your hands.
I would say a lot of locals can probably have a better chance of getting the smaller contracts anyway, because they're not gonna have the capacity to do the really big ones. So starting with the smaller ones would be great.
I think even to Amy's point and your point of education, understanding how to be a sub to begin with before you're a full blown prime.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and then you understand reporting and you understand some of these requirements and the pains that it takes, and you get that history like Yoki was talking about, you get that history of having received federal funds and performing well, and then you're gonna score
So
better.
they're more comfortable with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks. After I was done with the Peace Corps, they told me that I could score really high to get a federal job. I didn't apply for one, but they said, I guess the government even does that on an individual basis too.
We have an AmeriCorps Vista that just did that as well. Two. It just did
Two.
that, yeah.
They have a layout for federal jobs.
Okay, we're almost at the end of our agenda, so any action items from other commission members online or here?
One of the prongs in our plan was the incubator, which I think was up there. But do we need to put some energy from the commission behind that? I mean, don't, it's going forward.
Our new economic recovery core fellow, that's
Okay.
his project for the next 2.5 years. So,
He's the one coming soon, right?
yes, he is supposed to participate in July.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So he'll update us on the status of, he's revising our old proposal, and we'll probably be reaching out to a number of you, County Melly, Olin, on getting to know people and learn about people in the incubation, acceleration, investment areas of business.
And going back to the visiting your favorite council member thing, is that something we can organize? Or should I just, because I've talked to a few of them, I know them individually, should I just reach out to them and tell you I'm gonna talk to them? Or did you want to do something like more organized?
Well, we do have one more agenda.
Okay, so anyway, I'm interested in helping in that regard and sitting down with some of the council members. Just, you know, advocating for.
I think even just letting them know, we had a meeting, this is what we talked about, this is
Yeah,
what we're
exactly.
interested in. You know, that's,
We're
they
excited about these
confirmed you to
things.
be on this commission, they're looking for those ideas from you, they want that feedback.
And by the time we go, it's not like a surprise to them.
Yeah.
They kind of know,
Yeah, exactly,
this is happening.
exactly.
Next agenda item is the creation of a PIG. So 5C, was that the one we just
We did
created?
that.
Okay, all right. So new business, last agenda item.
So this is where I was just, related to Greg's thoughts around outreach to council members. I think that's sort of a timing thing now too. As we're okay in the budget, I don't think it harms to touch base at this time if anyone is interested in doing that. Just to reiterate those talking points, and we really truly are the Office of Economic Development. I don't know why people are so hung up on the word revitalization. Maybe because history too, like some of the council members didn't know that there was an Office of Economic Development that was subsumed into OER, and they just don't like the name, but it's a real thing. So my thinking around this was potentially working with a PIG of commission members that would look at our charter language, suggest potential revisions. One of them potentially being switching the name to the Office of Economic Development and the commission to the Economic Development Commission. There's a couple ways we can go about this. The easy way is that the mayor has a reorganization authority. So he can just propose this to the city council and they can approve, and it amends the language in the charter. The harder way, and you guys will probably remember this if you've ever voted before, is the charter commission is appointed next year, starts their work. They have a lot of education and other things that goes on before they actually start looking at the body of charter amendments that might be on the ballot in 2026. And so the Charter Commission works every other election, I believe, to put amendments on the ballot to change the city charter. Now, Kim and I personally don't feel like what we're thinking about would be, yeah, would really be worthy of a ballot question. So we think we could get away with the mayor's reorg process, but I'm just adding this into the mix as new business for us to consider and potentially put on the agenda for the next meeting. If you might want to consider a permitted interaction group. Kim and I think it would be better if we work on something like this with the commission. The charter language is not extensive. I think it would be a pretty quick process, but it would be something that this other opportunity to go and have that next conversation with the city council. We heard you during the budget process, you know, the name, the work is all economic development. We'd like to make charter amendments to clarify that. Neither Kim nor I wrote our establishing language. This is the previous administration. It's not that I disagree with it, honestly. It's just a larger scope than we currently cover. So it could just be a name change, or it could be, you know, some other elements of that language. But the charter is the document that says, this is why the city is here. This is what they do. This is the purpose and intent. And so we have really hung our hat on when members were like, why do you even exist? Right? Well, you created this. We are not, you know, it's like, you know, any other department in the city, environmental services that picks up your garbage, right? That's in the city charter, all this stuff is. So I will leave that there for potential further discussion, and just wanted to put it in the mix for that, you know, noted follow-up that we feel like could be helpful and for future interactions with city council.
I would like to help with that too. So, anybody online? We got room for a couple of other folks. So I don't know if you guys heard Amy talk about the creation of a pig.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick today, so I apologize. I've been a little quiet, but I think it's a good idea. I just think we need to be careful how we frame it. Just because the ocean safety thing has been very controversial, and we want to like space ourselves away from that a little bit. So I think a pig is good because it gives us a little bit of time to kind of talk through it. But yeah, I'm with you guys. I think that we can do it more under the radar than have to like do a whole charter amendment. I think that that's a good call.
So were you saying you were interested in joining as well too?
Sure, I want
I mean-
to.
Or you're offering advice at this point, right?
Am I being voluntold? Yeah, I mean, sure, I'll do it. I think it's super interesting. I was actually at the city when it was the Office of Economic Development, so. And I can tell you firsthand that this department, what you guys do, is completely different than what that department did, so. Sure, yeah, be happy to help.
It sounds like a couple of meetings because we have to be done within a couple of months, right? So.
Yeah, but we would need
Lots
to
of
put this on the
research.
agenda for our next commission meeting to form the pig, make the recommendation for what it would investigate, and then.
I can help as well with Eliza.
Yeah.
I think it's good if the group investigates other names, like we just talked about economic development being misunderstood, right? And then we're gonna go with that. I mean, we're thinking about it. So I'm thinking, be creative, like maybe something different, you know? Because economic development is so broad, it doesn't really, I think the challenge is we actually are proactively doing something versus, you know, I'm not judging anyone, but picking up garbage is, you know, you're being reactive, you know? Providing find police is different. It's an essential service, and we think this is essential, but it doesn't grab you the way those things do. I mean, this isn't necessarily a good name, but I mean, like, what if you had the Office of Job Creation or something? I mean, that's, you know what that is, you know, it's like, what do you do? we create jobs, you know, is that a good thing? You know, it's a, well, that, maybe they'll argue that's not what we should be doing, but then that's the thing they had, nail on the head. So anyway, I would just recommend you consider all possibilities if you're gonna change the name, because you only have one chance probably to
Yep.
do this.
That's why we
Wow.
wanna put the brains of the commission on it.
Okay, we got them.
So I think Keone had to leave. so-
This is Melly. I'd be happy to help on that committee too. And I also have to leave as well, but thanks everybody. Good to see you all.
So did we, so we have 4 then?
Actually 5.
Yeah, 5, okay. So got one too many.
Well, we can't set it up till next meeting anyway.
Oh, all right, oh, this is just to announce it, okay. Got it, okay. All right, so I think we have the,
Would you like folks who are not on the PIG to just send you input on what charter amendments they might suggest? Just in their individual capacities?
Charter amendments, I mean, other than the
Or-
name, or
Yeah, what suggestions, right?
Well, the way a pig works is they take the the charge from the commission, investigate it, and bring the recommendation back to the commission for consideration. So there's the opportunity for input in the recommendation writing, where you could do that. And then there's also the commission input when the pig comes back from their convening to you know, say, I disagree and I think we should have added this, and it can be amended and approved as amended. When it comes back to the commission.
I think to your question of like input.
Well, like, just like Greg, provided this wonderful document in his individual capacity, and we could do the same thing individually on what changes we may want to suggest.
I think the PIG members would bring that together.
But
You're asking about those
I'm
that are
saying just
outside.
the timeline, if like, you're gonna have to wait till the next meeting to set up a PIG, or in the meantime, we don't need a PIG to do that, we could just send it.
but it
Well,
has to also be
so
subject to
we
sunshine
meet
law.
with Owen and Eliza on the agenda prior to the next meeting. And so if you would like to provide something that you would like in the recommendation for the charge to the pig, I think you can communicate that to them, that we can put in our draft for the, the charge to the pig, what they are supposed to do.
And so essentially in this case, he was the PIG.
Yeah.
Because he did all the research and the recommendations on his own, but the PIG would eventually, you guys would all divide and conquer on putting something like that together. I thought you were asking if like they weren't on the PIG, how they would provide input.
No,
Okay.
I'm just saying that we don't need a PIG to give you guys suggestions on what language might be.
The next meeting, you can come and say them, right,
Yeah,
at the meeting,
We could.
just offer your comments at the meeting. If you give a memo though, I'm not sure, it may have to be published, I mean, like under sunshine laws. That was my problem last meeting, I didn't give it to you in time, so we weren't able to.
We could
Post it.
vote on it,
Oh, I see.
so you can't vote on something that hasn't been posted yet. And available to the public.
so it will be an agenda item that we'll talk about to add this for our next meeting.
And then maybe if you guys have thoughts on whether or not to establish a PIG, or like Olu was saying, just have the conversation as the group and make those changes as the group and not even go into the PIG in the next meeting.
I'm not opposed to PIG, to be clear.
Yeah.
I was just saying that if we have to
Why
wait
bother to do
one
that? if we
quarter,
don't- Yeah.
then we could, yeah.
Someone's gotta do the work, right, that's what I view pigs as, they're sort of.
Well, we're meeting
workhorse.
in July. It's,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, all right.
it's not even.
Does that conclude new business? Anybody else? So we're a few minutes over. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Sorry, missed that whole spirited
Any-
discussion.
Any oppositions, Debbie or Eliza, oppositions to adjourning?
It's
Feel better.
Thank you, guys.
Feel better, Eliza. Bye, Deb.
Bye, thank you.
You guys can lunch.
I think,
Yeah, thank you.